backlight. What's up everyone, this is Kit. Time for another video. Today we're going to be talking about something kind of controversial, and I know not a lot of people would really want to talk about this. We're talking about broken rods. Okay, I was bobbing my head there like it was a good thing. It's not. Okay, and well, no one really likes having rods broken. But believe it or not, most of the time it's user's fault. It's not the rod. Sometimes there's a defect with the manufacturing process. I'm not about to get into that. But what we're going to talk about is how you can avoid these things. Now, from what I have been seeing a lot lately, oops, that's Strider. She's noisy, and you'll hear her in the background. Anyway, so okay, cool. So here's the thing. A lot of people now are casting with a whipping motion, which is casting like this. Let me make sure I'm not gonna hit my ceiling lights here. Okay, so they like hearing the whipping sound like that, you know. What happens there is that if you actually have the wrong motion, and there is a chance of the lure hitting the tip, your rod will break. Even if it doesn't break while you're casting, what tends to happen is when the lure hits the tip, just by a slight bit, there's going to be micro cracks in them, and you're going to get a really big surprise when you hook something or when you're trying to jiggle the rod off of a snag. A lot of problems occur when you don't even know them, especially when you're transporting rods with hooks. Now, hooks tend to hit the graphite, and what happens is that when it shakes, when you're transporting and the rod shakes, be it single piece rod or two piece or multi-piece, when you have the lure in one of the rings, okay, and the hooks are exposed, and remember, these hooks are sharp, and when they're sharp they can scratch. And even just the metal itself, if you keep on putting it in a place where it could bang on the carbon or the graphite, it causes micro scratches, and those scratches could lead to just one of the graphite breaking, and when it breaks, the others will break. Now, most of the breakages of rods happens when it gets bent out of shape, so the tube collapses and becomes an oval, and when it forms that oval, your rod's going to be in danger, and most of the time that's when you're pulling back. When you pull back and compress that circle, which means that you are way over, you're high sticking it. So that's what happens when you high stick. So yeah, it breaks. Now, when you're leaning your rod onto something and it's a straight edge, okay, and you keep on leaning it and it's hitting the same place, especially with I've seen people just putting their rods and, you just not really slowly, gently putting it down. Now, that takes a toll, okay? So, honestly, these are all in our control, and sometimes we tend to forget. Now, there's quite a few things that you need to understand about rods. Now, this is a very good example. This is a very good rod. Actually, quite excellent. It is a high modulus graphite blank. Now, there's something that you need to know when it comes to high modulus graphite. they're very sensitive, and they're very fragile. They're very tough if you use them according to how they're designed. And take for example a rod like this is an ultralight rod. If you overline it over the specs of the rod, there is a chance you're gonna break it down the line. Now, what a lot of people don't know is that there's a lot of things that happen while you're transporting the rod, while you're even just putting it in your house, putting it away. Okay, so if you have a rod stand, you can store your rods upright. If you lean it against the wall at an angle, it will form a weird bend over time. While that doesn't affect the overall performance of the rod, it's not straight anymore, so it will cause a little bit of issue. This is a two-piece rod and it came with a rod sack. Or a rod sock, not a sack. Something like this, okay? This is for a bigger rod. Let's see, most of the rods that I have are stored in a, or on racks. They're in the racks, okay? So they're all standing up, they're not touching each other. If you don't have the luxury of having 2 or 3 racks or even just one rack at your house, it's a very good idea to put them in the rod sock and store them where they could lay flat. It could be on top of the cabinet or whatnot, and it doesn't matter if they're stacked up like that, just as long as they're actually laying flat. Now when they're in the sock, what happens is that they don't bang against each other, and the sock actually kind of cushions things. So another thing to remember is that always remember where the tip is and don't grab it there, okay? Always grab it in the middle, especially when you're carrying it, because some rods have really fragile tips that sometimes when you bend, you grip it there, the guide hits or compresses, and again it causes little fractures that could break it. I have been fishing here for about 15 years, and back home I've been fishing for, well, most of my life, and I've only broken probably about 10 rods in my lifetime, and most of it's my fault. There were only 2 instances where the rod broke. Well, the rod broke, those rods broke because of a manufacturing defect. One of those rods, interestingly enough, was a double foot rod. Let me get an example here. I hope this is big enough for the camera to see. Now, interestingly, it broke here in the middle of the 2 feet. Okay? That was so weird. And obviously, you know, that was a manufacturing defect, and I claimed warranty for that rod. But most of the time it's really just because of how we handle it. And these, honestly, these are things that we have control of. So when I'm transporting rods in the car, take for example, I'm going to Fujairah for some fishing. When I have the reel attached, I get a rubber band, okay, wrap around like that, and one of the guides. So it actually keeps the tip away from the body there, but you have to be very careful, okay, when you're doing this. Don't over tighten. If you over tighten, it's gonna break. Now when I remove, I just take one end, bang, it's that fast. A better way is to actually use a piece of string. Again, you just jam it, turn like that, and at the very end, and this is why I like the string really. I mean, this is a string I carry around, and you don't have to do a very secure knot. It's just something that you could untie easy like that, just so it doesn't really vibrate. Now you could bunch up a few rods, do the same at the back, and what happens is, see, it doesn't make that rattling sound, because that rattling sound is a guide hitting your blank. And again, accidents like that happen. Over time, what happens is that that knocking will really break the tip. Now the rods will break at the weakest point where the guides hit it or whatnot. Sometimes you just don't notice these little things, and honestly, these are all things that we have control of. Now if I'm bunching a lot up, like take for example 5 rods, this is a very, very cheap Velcro band I got for like 5 dirhams or something in Daiso. So I just wrap the back with this. You know, I mean, it's quite strong, but usually what happens is they bunch up like that, the butts, okay? So I can pick up the whole bunch, okay, and if they're one piece, they're all one piece. 2 piece, I keep them stored or bunched up in a different bunch. So I have two bunches, one for 1 piece and one for 2 piece. If I'm going jigging, I usually have those bands that you could either buy, or you could well, some of them are actually provided when you buy the rods, but there's a lot. You could use rubber bands for that. The problem I have with rubber bands is that they break, especially under the sun, or if you leave them in the car in the heat after probably 2 or 3 uses, they break. So I tend to do the string. Now this is a very soft string, and it's actually quite strong, and also since it's soft, it's not going to damage the sides. So you can't use braid. Braid is too sharp, especially when you tighten it. It can compress, and this has a little bit of give, especially on the sides there. So this is the kind of thing that I've been using, and I've been happy with it so far. No broken rods, so great. And I'm in the business of actually selling rods, so this is something that's probably not going to be good for me, but it's good for you, and this is the most important thing there. Now, I kind of hate it that there are some breakages that we have, and I mean, this is nothing. It costs nothing, and it's a very good solution, and I get frustrated when something goes wrong and it's not beyond our control, and it's probably a 1-cent solution. So yeah, I hope this little video helps you and stops your rods. I mean, they're very expensive investments, so I really hate it when I hear someone breaking a rod. It just kind of hurts, you know. Now remember that each time you break a rod, or each time a rod breaks, a cat cries. The internet loves cats. Don't make the cats cry. I'll see you next time. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click that bell button somewhere, and I'll see you in the next one.